Hi, this is Kim Newlove, host of the Pharmacist Voice podcast. Welcome to the fourth and final part of my Pharmacist Dad series. Each Friday in June 2022, I'm publishing an interview with a pharmacist dad in honor of Father's Day, which was Sunday, June 19th. If you're new to the Pharmacist Voice podcast, welcome. Again, my name is Kim Newlove, and I'm the host. I'm a pharmacist by training, but I made a career transition to voice actor and podcast host. Among other things, I narrate audiobooks for women pharmacist authors, provide medical narration to clients in the pharmaceutical and biotech industries, and narrate content for explainer videos and e-learning projects. I was inspired by my nonverbal son who has autism to combine my background as a pharmacist with my speaking voice and launch my business, The Pharmacist Voice, in 2017. My son Craig helped me realize the power of having a voice and using it. My solo podcast episodes are about some aspect of being a pharmacist, a voice actor, a pharmacist podcaster, or my career transition from pharmacist to voice actor and podcast host. My interview shows feature a variety of people who use their voices to advocate for something, educate in some way, or entertain so that you are inspired to use your voice too. This is episode 158, and you can find the show notes on my website, thepharmacistvoice.com. Just click on the podcast tab and search for episode 158. Today's episode is an interview with Iqbal Atcha. During the first half of our conversation, we'll discuss how Iqbal uses his voice as a pharmacist. Then, in the second half, we'll focus on Iqbal's role as a father and grandfather. Iqbal Atcha is the senior consultant for healthcare talent acquisition at Lean Human Capital, now a part of symplr. He provides advisory services for clients across the healthcare recruitment industry, specializing in organizational analysis, resource allocation, process efficiency, technology and automation, and recruitment marketing. Iqbal joined Lean Human Capital in January 2022. Prior to this, he served as the Director of Talent Acquisition Strategy for Anthem, where he helped develop, align, and oversee talent acquisition strategies for 7 subsidiaries, including Caremore Health, Beacon Health, and IngenioRx. Before Anthem, Iqbal was the Senior Manager of Talent Acquisition for Walmart's Health and Wellness Division, where he led a team of 9 recruiters and led enterprise-wide initiatives centered around diversity and inclusion, continuous improvement, and workforce planning. Iqbal received his Bachelor of Pharmacy degree from Midwestern University College of Pharmacy and a Master's in Business Administration from Kennedy Western University. He is a certified recruiter through Recruiter Academy, RACR, a senior professional in human resources, or SPHR, and a 3-time distinguished Toastmaster. Iqbal is also the host of Healthcare and Higher podcast. I have listened to probably half of his episodes, and I really enjoy this one, and I recommend you listen to this one too. Let me just share the podcast description with you, and then we'll get on with the interview. Here we go. Healthcare and Higher podcast is a podcast for healthcare professionals and healthcare executives looking for ideas, insights, and inspiration from higher-level leaders across the healthcare industry. Iqbal Atcha is a registered pharmacist, talent acquisition leader, and senior healthcare recruitment consultant. He invites healthcare executives, medical entrepreneurs, and industry experts to share details about how they got to where they are today, what they envision the future of healthcare to be, and how they are working to make it more accessible, affordable, and effective. Now, that's the end of the description, and I just want to reiterate, I really like this podcast, and I recommend you check it out too. There are links to Healthcare and Higher podcast in the show notes for Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and also on his website. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Iqbal Atcha. Hi, Iqbal. Welcome to the Pharmacist Voice podcast. How are you?
I'm great, Kim. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, great. It's my pleasure. We've known each other for a long time now, probably a year or two, and I really enjoy our conversations. And now we get to be on a podcast episode together.
Yeah, so it's official, right?
Yep, it's official. Awesome. Well, I want to welcome you to my Pharmacist Dad series. And we're going to talk about two things: how you use your voice as a pharmacist and how you use your voice as a dad. And we're going to start with all the pharmacy stuff. And can you tell me how you used your identity as a pharmacist?
Sure. I've had a pretty interesting career. So, for those of your listeners that are wondering, what have I done with my pharmacy degree and how have I used it to help others? It's been a mixed bag. Starting out as an entrepreneur, opening up multiple independent pharmacies and consulting companies, working with other healthcare organizations and C-suite levels, I've always leveraged the pharmacy degree in a way to build a connection with executives and with other healthcare providers to help them recognize, hey, I'm an integral part of the healthcare team, but I'm also bringing in valuable insights that you don't get to see. So if we're going to work together, why don't you leverage what I'm bringing to the table, and let's do this as a collaborative effort. And that's really been, one of the key hallmarks of why I would say success has come naturally for the people I've worked with, is because they understand that pharmacists see things differently and they have a knowledge base that's very different than their own. So working in that space, that's been a really big an asset. I'd say the other element of my career that's probably been very eclectic is having moved out of an entrepreneurial or managerial, from an operational perspective, into more of a human resources role. I've actually spent 15 years working in talent acquisitions for healthcare companies, helping them attract other healthcare professionals, about who our company is, inviting them to learn more about us, engaging them in conversations to identify their strengths and looking for matches within the company, and helping them come on board, developing and training them for greater levels of experience and responsibility, and watching them grow and become leaders of their own. And so, as a pharmacist, what's really remarkable is that being in that driver's seat, where you're able to find talent, and then bring them into a company and then help them become better, requires a certain deftness, right? Like, and I don't mean deafness like inability to hear. I mean deftness like DEFTNESS, some agility, sharpness, and mental capacity to be able to seamlessly maneuver through challenges and obstacles that require somebody that can see things from a holistic perspective. So I think that that's probably where my pharmacy degree and my healthcare background have been an asset for all parties involved.
Absolutely. And to go a little further, can you tell me a little bit how you use your skills and all your background in Atcha International,
Yes.
your website, your online business?
Yeah, so that's been a remarkable journey. If I have to say it, Kim, I think this is like the third step of my career. And so, about 2 years ago, I started a company called Atcha International, where I've been helping mostly healthcare professionals and healthcare executives rebrand themselves for career advancement opportunities and also leadership development. And what I have found is that, and I'm sure that anybody can attest to this or resonate with this, is that you believe that you have a certain skill set that is valuable to a certain population. The fact of the matter is that while that may be true, most people don't know that that skill set is out there. And they're not aware of who you are. So you might just think, I'm going to hang a shingle, and I'm just going to say, hey, these are the services that I offer. And, the old adage, build it and they will come, that doesn't work. You literally have to go out there and tell people what your services are. You have to explain to them the value that you can bring to them, understand their pain points, recognize some of their pleasure angles, and then enhance them through your services and products. And so for the last 2 years, I've been able to leverage my pharmacy degree and my healthcare background to talk about building relationships and leveraging their experiences and the clients' backgrounds, and their skill sets, and showing them synergies between what they bring to the table and what companies and organizations are looking for.
I think your company could not have come about at a better time. Some of the offerings that you have on your website, resume reviews, LinkedIn overhauls. Can you talk about some of the services you offer? There are so many pharmacists looking to do something else. You are the guy they need to talk to revise their resume. Go on. What services do you offer?
Absolutely. You know what? There's a handful of services that I offer to my clients, and I think that the majority of them today, when they approach me, are coming to me with a problem that they cannot solve, and usually that problem is universal. I am stuck with where I'm at. I'm not happy, and I'm looking to do something different, but I just don't know what, and I don't know how. That's almost 92, 94% of the conversations that I have today with clients. And what I tell them is, first and foremost, you need to be able to understand what you're bringing to the table and you have to own it, right? Understanding what knowledge, experience, skills, and abilities you have, they need to be cataloged and not just recognized and identified, but we need to be able to articulate them and slap a label on them that resonates with the world that's looking for them. So, several things that I offer in that space are really career coaching. Again, helping my clients understand who they are, how they've come to where they are today, understanding their philosophies and their moral and their morals to help them stand on that as a foundation, and then cataloging their strengths, skills, so that when they put it out there to the universe responds. Right? You can say that, hey, I'm really good at compounding medications, or I'm really good at counseling medications or counseling patients. But in fact, the people that are looking for you are not using those words. They're not looking for a compounder. They're not looking for a patient counselor. What they're looking for is somebody that has interpersonal skills or an ability to problem solve. And those are words that most clients don't automatically gravitate towards. So, helping them articulate what they do and really reframing it in the way that HR, talent acquisitions, hiring managers look for is one major piece. Another factor is the resume, right? So many times, most people will say, "Hey, I found a template online and it looks great, so I'm just gonna, plug and chug." They've got like big blocks of like enter first name here, and they do that. Yeah, you can do that. The fact of the matter is that most of those templates that are available are not applicant tracking system friendly. They are not keyword rich. They are also not read by a human being. And I think that that's another factor that most people forget is that back in the day, when I was a kid, even until I was a teenager, you could walk into a store and with a resume in hand, ask to speak to the manager and says, "Oh, I'm looking for a job." And they would take your resume and somebody would literally read it. Fast forward 20 years later, that happens 17, maybe 18% of the time. And again, small industries, small companies that have very few staff, they may do that. But in fact, the reality is that most opportunities that are advertised today or are even posted today are picked up by a job search engine like Indeed or Glassdoor or Career Builder, Monster, and there is no human being that's reading it. There is a computer. And what they're looking for are things that the corporate employer or the employer wants to find. And so helping people understand how to change the resume or use an applicant tracking system friendly resume that highlights their key skills in a chronological capacity with keywords that show achievements and accomplishments, not fluff words. And that's a big factor as well. So we talk about that, and I help my clients really catalog all of their great things on a 1 to 2 page resume that they can immediately use and have a mobile friendly document that can be used whenever they find a job that they want to apply to. And the third thing I will tell you is interviewing skills. So great, you've used these skills, you've cataloged yourself, you've gone through a career coaching, you know who you are, you've developed a resume, and now you're using these tools and these techniques. And they say, "Wow, Kim, you know what? I love what I'm seeing on this resume. Let's talk." And you get there and they ask you the first question, which is, "Tell me about yourself," and you are all over the place, or you don't have your story, or the narrative that you are trying to convey doesn't match the words that you're using. And now you've realized that in the first 5 minutes, you've tanked your interview. And that literally happens. So, what I do, especially with the 15 years of experience being on the other side of that interview table, is helping candidates recognize a standard set of questions that are typically asked at about 80% of all interviews, no matter what level they are, how to prepare for them, how to come in as an educated candidate, right? You may be one of the lucky three out of 100, 200 people that have applied that gets that we're interested. Let's talk. But in those three interviews, one of you is going to make it to level two, maybe two, and nobody makes it, one person makes it past level one. And it's all because of the confidence, the content, and the character that you convey in those interviews that really make that distinguishing factor. And that is what I teach my clients today, is how to remain in that stance and in that position of solid character and presentation that makes all the difference for the hiring manager.
You are so well positioned to do what you do, and I know you know it. I just wanna say I recognize it. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes, and I think of you as a LinkedIn guru too. I mean, you are really good at LinkedIn. Your profile looks fantastic, and I understand you help other people optimize theirs.
I do. And that's a great call out as well, Kim. Thank you for that. Yeah, I don't know what it is about social media. I mean, there's a lot of different platforms, right? There's Pinterest, there's Facebook, there's Twitter, there's Instagram. But I have just found this natural attraction to LinkedIn. It is so rich with so many different modalities. And of course, working in the space of talent acquisition, people, in my industry, recruiters, hiring managers, leaders of HR, they are desperate for talent, and they know that they are going to be able to find people on LinkedIn that are out there that are promoting themselves. So I appreciate that compliment, and I'm humbly accepting of that, because I have learned that there's like 18 to 20 different aspects of just your profile that if you invest 15, 30 minutes on each piece, highlighting it, embellishing it, and really accentuating the quality of each of those 18 sections, you can see not only your follower count increase by 10 to 20 fold within a matter of weeks, but more importantly, you will attract people that you are looking to engage with. Right? You don't want just somebody that's going to sell you, a blender online because they saw you, posted something. Like, you want people of quality. And I teach people how to do that, so that way when you're talking about a subject matter that's near and dear to you, how do you position your profile so that way it's always promoted by LinkedIn's algorithm? Right? We've all heard the word algorithm. It's a nice fancy way of just saying a formula, right? But the reality of it is that LinkedIn is extremely powerful and extremely prejudicial. If when we think about discrimination, it's a bad thing. And it's not, it's no different with LinkedIn either, but it discriminates in a very different way. And so what I try to do is I teach my clients, like, this is how you should, number one, understand what the algorithm is looking for. And it's sort of like, in any way, in any company or in any, contest that you're winning, that you're trying to race, if you can learn what the rules are and play by the rules to the best of your ability, you're gonna win. And that's where I see a lot of my clients learn how to leverage LinkedIn for their assets and their advantage, and then how to promote their companies that they've been hired by to do a great job in terms of recruiter attraction or candidate attraction and customer attraction as well.
I feel like you have almost figured out the magic formula. I mean, you really have. And you and I have talked, not today, but so don't rewind the podcast, folks. But you and I have talked off camera, off mic about LinkedIn topics before. And I like the systematic way you think about LinkedIn and you talk about LinkedIn. You really go from top to bottom, and I actually think I wrote you a recommendation, thanking you.
You did.
Remember that? Yeah?
Thank you. Big heart. Big heart for that. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I like the way that you talk about LinkedIn. You make it make sense to me. I love it too, okay? I'm a LinkedIn nerd too, but I think you're, like, 2 levels above me.
I live in that space. And so probably that's why. Let me ask you this. Was the advice that I gave to you helpful?
Yes, one of the things that you recommended was that I ask for endorsements from people, and I am slowly doing that. So when I meet people, sometimes I'll endorse them and I'll say, "Hey, you noticed my podcast. You commented about my podcast. Could you endorse me for podcasting?" And it is kind of like part of the conversation now. When I meet somebody, and I am slowly building those endorsements up. But that was one of the recommendations you made. And then once I get to that level where I've got 99, excuse me, I've got 99 endorsements, then I'm highly endorsed. And you told me about asking for recommendations from people who are kind of subject matter experts or, also highly endorsed for that. So I have learned so much about just that one little thing, that skills section from you. I never really built it up until you noticed it and you said, Kim, you're quite the podcaster. You've only got like 6 endorsements. So you have given me good advice and thank you.
I'm very glad that it panned out for you. And your listeners should know you are one of the first influencers for me in this podcast space. I have to give props to Mike Kelzer as well. He is actually one of the individuals that invited me on his show, The Business of Pharmacy, which I think is a phenomenal podcast. I'm definitely giving him a plug and a shout out. But listening to your podcast and speaking with you about how you use your voice to help other pharmacists and other healthcare professionals seek out opportunities and leverage that gave me the strength and the courage to start my own. So you already know this, Kim, but for your listeners, I actually do a podcast as well. It's called Healthcare and Hire, and one of the things that I've tried to do, and probably another way that I use my pharmacist voice, is that I seek out and I interview healthcare professionals who are working for companies at a director level or above to talk about not only the great things that their company is doing, but how they and their teams are making a huge impact in their personal and professional journey. So if you want to learn a little bit more about that, please look on Spotify or Apple Podcasts and just type in Healthcare and Hire. We are going to hit 50 episodes by the end of June. Super excited to have had that many guests and hopefully another 50 more.
50. Let's go. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Big
Congrats.
confetti celebration for me.
Yes. Oh, and I know you're good at social media, so I expect to see social media confetti from you.
Absolutely. I will do that.
Awesome. Yeah, and I listen to your podcast, and I know you know that because I'm always, like, tweeting it out or yeah, I
Yes.
put Instagram posts on there. Yeah, there's people that I would never have, met otherwise or heard about, and some of them I've reached out to and connected with because I felt inspired by putting them on your podcast. So, you do more than just entertain with your podcast and help people understand how your guests bring healthcare to a higher level. You also are a connector, and you may not even know that. These things are happening behind the scenes. So that's cool.
Yeah, that is very true. I think that's one of the strengths that I remember learning about at my guess midlife point, around the 30-year mark is when I realized that I enjoy having relationships and building relationships, and I enjoy leveraging relationships for other people. So being a connector means, oh, you have a problem? Oh, you should talk to my friend. My friend might have a solution for you. So that is definitely one of the things that I enjoy about that. I think the other piece that you just called out, and I want to really highlight this, is the podcast and the work that I do really is driven by three principles. My job in life is to use my voice to educate other people, to entertain them as well, and to enlighten them. Right. So there's a three-pronged approach in everything I do. I might come into a conversation and say, well, hey, here's what I know. And they may say, I had no idea that that was even out there. So thank you for that. And then I try to enlighten them by saying, if you try something in a different way, that might be more advantageous for you. And then, of course, a little bit of entertainment goes a long way.
Yes. Hey, my guests advocate for something, educate in some way, or entertain, and you do multiple things. And hey, that's the sign of a great guest.
Love it.
Yes.
Absolutely.
All right. Are there any other ways that you use your voice kind of with your pharmacy background that you'd like to share?
Sure. So there's a couple of other things that make me proud of what my education has helped me achieve. A couple of things that I'm really proud to say is that I enjoy mentoring young students or younger professionals that are going through pharmacy school. So I've actually had the privilege of being an associate professor at my alma mater, Midwestern University, as well as two other pharmacy schools here in the Chicagoland area, Rosalind Franklin University and Chicago State University. And I've done some guest lecturing at UIC and a couple of other pharmacy-based organizations. And so, I really, really appreciate going into pharmacy organizations and pharmacy schools and talking to them about how there is an onus or responsibility on the individual to not just accept what they've been provided in terms of education by the school or by their peers, but how to use it and capitalize on it in a way that is effective in today's environment. right? So all my guests and all the people that I speak with today are still trying to figure out how to be effective in a post-pandemic world, right? Whether you're talking, excuse me, whether you're talking pharmacy or vision or nursing or hospitals, nobody has figured it out yet. Nobody's like riding on a wave and they're like, oh, we figured this out. So, this is what it is. But, when you're taught information or when you're exposed to information or education, it's your responsibility to figure out, well, how do I apply this? And a lot of times when I speak to younger professionals, it almost seems like as if it's a recipe that they just need to follow in order to have the broth or the pie or the entree created. And in reality, a wise woman once told me that it's a recipe, not a statue. So you can change it as long as you share what the new ingredients are with others. And that's the same advice that I want to give to the listeners today is it's your recipe, right? So you're going to come with a bunch of ingredients that you've been taught, but you don't have to use chicken stock. Why don't you try beef stock, right? Or why don't you mix up carrots with turnips and just see how that turns out? But in order to be able to do that well, you need to understand what the situation is and what the problems are out there. So ask questions, network well, and say, well, why don't we try this? So going back to schools and speaking at organizations, whether they are pharmacy based or HR based, I leverage my healthcare background and my experiences in the healthcare space to highlight examples of where I did that and how it was advantageous for others. So that's one. And the other thing I would tell you is that for many years, almost 14, I was an active member and an active leader with a very remarkable, and I cannot speak highly enough of this organization. It's called Toastmasters International. It's a nonprofit organization that helps individuals fine tune their communication and leadership skills. And what I have found is that through that journey, I was not only able to become confident using my voice and speaking to different audiences, patients, providers, students, and legislators as well about topics that were near and dear to healthcare and pharmacists in general. But I was also able to lead teams and communicate effectively to audiences larger than 1,000. So when you think about how do what does that mean? Well, if somebody's going to ask me, well, how do you feel about this topic? In a polarized world that we're living in today, everyone has an opinion, right? It doesn't matter if you're red or blue, any sexual orientation, any religion, whatever it is, everyone's got an opinion. But the fact of the matter is that your opinion is based on, and the ability to articulate your opinion is based on language and it's based on knowledge. It's not based on passion. It's not based on, what you see the world as. It's ability to be able to influence others. And Toastmasters was remarkably instrumental in helping me fine tune my communication skills for that very purpose. And so, being a representative of the healthcare profession, specifically pharmacy, I got to go and speak in different countries, in different states, to different groups across the country, and talk to them about my experiences and helping them see how Toastmasters helped me in that space, and giving other healthcare professionals, pharmacy students as well, predominantly, to say, well, why don't we have this in our curriculum today, and helping them charter some clubs on site as well.
So you helped the students in the Chicagoland area start Toastmasters chapters?
3 efforts were made. I believe 2 of them were very successful. So we were able to charter 2 or 3 clubs in the Chicagoland area. I don't know if they are still active, but I certainly see a lot of those students that I worked with before today, and they also appreciate what they learned and gained from Toastmasters as well.
Awesome. I am in a Toastmasters club in the Toledo, Ohio area, and we've been attending by Zoom, and now we have hybrid meetings. I'm still attending by Zoom. And I understand that you are no longer active in your meetings, right?
Unfortunately, yes. I have family responsibilities and a new job that really changes the dynamics of my freedom.
I know that you know this, but listeners may not. Toastmasters invite guests. You are invited to come at 7 a.m. Eastern anytime you want to my Toastmasters club. I'm not as active as I'd like to be because with the pandemic and my husband changing jobs and lack of childcare, that's just where I'm at. But I am going to continue my Toastmasters journey because I love it. And like you, I see so much value in it. And just learning those words that I overuse. So, like, The value of that in the first meeting alone drew me in. I would highly recommend anybody listening to this check out Toastmasters if you want to become a better public speaker and a better evaluator too. Do you have anything to add to that, Iqbal?
I would say even so, if you're on the fence, right? First and foremost, you should absolutely do what Kim has said. Just type in Toastmasters International in Google or Bing or whatever search engine is your favorite, and then just go check out their website. And if you're still on the fence, just follow them on LinkedIn, and every Wednesday you're going to get a new word from them. And you might think, well, that's pretty minor. Like, yeah, well, what's the big deal, right? Try incorporating that word once every day in a conversation with a leader, with a peer, with a colleague, even a family member. And I guarantee you that after 8 weeks of doing that, your vocabulary and your confidence using new words will skyrocket. That is one of the ways that I found myself attracted to the group, is because I started doing that and I was like, I would never have used that in my lexicon. Oh, wait, lexicon is a word. I've just used that. That's incredible.
Yes, yes. And that's part of each meeting, the word of the day. And it's not just on LinkedIn on Wednesdays, it's
Yep.
also a part of every single meeting. Yeah,
Love
I
it.
love Toastmasters. I could nerd out about this all day, but I'm going to keep it moving. All right. Is there anything else you'd like to share about your background as a pharmacist before we move on to the dad stuff?
I'm pretty, I mean, it's end of day, right? So my brain is like a post caffeine withdrawal. I would say no. I think that that's really probably where I want the audience to understand that as a pharmacist, I've been blessed with a lot of opportunities to have conversations and have an impact on others in those veins. So yeah, I think that that pretty much covers the gamut on that piece.
Awesome. Yes, thank you for sharing all that. You shared so much and I didn't know some of that. So this was great for me to learn even more about you. But now we're going to turn it over to the dad stuff. Now, I know that you are a dad, but our listeners may not know that. Can you tell me a little bit about your family?
Sure. Well, I'm a dad and a granddad, so we're going to put both of those in the bucket. I am actually a father of three. I have a now 30-year-old son, a 27-year-old stepdaughter, and a 26-year-old daughter. And they all live either in Chicagoland or a few hours away. And it has been a remarkable journey to have played a significant role in their lives. When kids grow up, it's a very different world, right? They have a different relationship. But a lot of the things that I remember when they were younger was just teaching them new skills and then watching them try things out on their own. I'm very proud of all three of them. I'm going to give the details later, but one of them is now a PhD in political science and actually does data scientist work for a company called US Foods. Another one is a police officer for the Hoffman Estates Police Department here in Chicagoland. And the other one is working towards becoming a technical writer. So if you ever buy a microphone or a piece of equipment and you get that manual, yeah, so she's going to be writing those in the next few years. So those are my kids. Both of my daughters, stepdaughter and daughter, have had children in the last year and a half. So I have a 18, no, sorry, 19 19-month-old twins, and a 17-month-old grandson. So grandson, granddaughter, and grandson. So very, very, very interesting times.
Yes, yes. Now, you're not that much older than I am, so I've got to ask. I was a young mom. I was a mom at 24, pregnant at 23, new mom at 24. When did you become a dad?
I beat you. I became a dad at 20,
You
and
did
then
beat me.
again at the age of 24. So yeah, started earlier than most. But you're going to win on either side, right? If you start early, it requires a lot more investment, patience, time. But you get to reap more benefits at a later age. And I always joke with my 30-year-old son, says, "Hey, guess what? When I'm 80, you're 60. We're going to be sharing a nursing home room together. So just get ready for that."
That's
Um,
morbid. Come on.
I have to, I got to get under his skin in some capacity. So that works pretty well. But yeah, I started young as well.
There are so many different people that will be listening to this and some may even be pharmacy students. You get to speak about what it was like to have children during pharmacy school, or at least one. What was that like?
Very trying. So imagine going from being a single guy to married and a kid within like 9 months, and all of a sudden, you realize that the trajectory of your career has changed. So it's important that not only that you spend time and raise your son, but at the same time raising yourself to a level where you're able to be a provider. So, what I remember of those years where I was going to pharmacy school, and here's just a snapshot of what that looked like. Driving from the north side of the city to the western suburbs, which was an hour drive every morning to get there before your 7 o'clock exam, being on campus from 7 to 4, jumping back in the car after a hard day of studying and taking exams and doing compounding lab, to drive an hour back and then working another 7 hours at Walgreens Pharmacy, to be able to provide for your family, get home, go to bed, and crash at 12 midnight, only to wake up at 5 o'clock again and get some studying in. That was the life for 3 years straight. And I'll be honest with you, there were days where daycare was an issue. Like, we did not have somebody to watch the kids. So guess what? My professors at Midwestern University were very gracious, and we brought the toys and we brought the snacks. And dad was, sitting on the sidelines, listening and taking notes while kids were playing with their Legos and, playing with their little toy stuffed animals and things of that nature. And they were it worked out very well. I owe a lot to the good-hearted people that were both part of my class and the university. But yeah, there were a lot of trying moments. And I would say that for those of you that are listening to the show that are in pharmacy school and married or have kids or both, man, power to you. I mean, I'm just sending you lots of positive vibes and prayers, because it's a rough go, but the payoff is worth it. I'll guarantee you that. It's worth it.
It's a good thing you did all that while you were young. Can you imagine doing that in your 40s? It can be harder. There is a difference. Yes.
Absolutely. Well, I take care of 3 80-year-olds now. I think you know that, Kim. Like, I'm also a power of
Yeah.
attorney for an 84-year-old father, an 82-year-old mom, and an 81-year-old stepmother. And they are equally as needy as, a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, right? They're able to articulate their needs, but they are also not exactly very adult-like. So when they throw a tantrum, it's a very interesting place to be as an adult caregiver. So it's a lot more challenging now, but I'm also a little bit wiser. So I'm using my dad experiences and applying okay, just breathe. You can cry it all out. Just go ahead and cry. We're going back in the car. We're going home. We're turning around. We're not going to your favorite, ice cream store because you're being like that. And literally, that's how it goes. But again, it's great to have the strength, both physical, mental, emotional, to be able to do it all. I'm sure that I will be a crotchety old man when I get older, and I'm hoping that my children won't have to experience the same. But yeah, if they do, a little bit of payback is not bad.
Oh my gosh. Yes, payback, right? I have seen pictures of, I think it's your dad and your stepmom in your car, you transporting them around. Is that right?
Yes, I drive. Yeah, I drive them at least twice a week somewhere. So you've probably seen me and my dad and me and my mom. I think the last picture I posted with my mother-in-law was on her birthday, so we took her out for dinner, and that was a that was an interesting experience too. But yes, I do try to give them some exposure as well, because I think the reality of it is, if all you do on social media is talk about your professional, interests, then you're not really exposing, you're not being authentic. You're not being as vulnerable as you can be. And my mother-in-law and my dad love the camera. They love it. Mom, not so much. So I don't shine the light on her. But anytime I'm with my dad or with my mother-in-law, yep, I'll show them. My son and daughter, they're kind of like my mom. They don't really want to be on the camera. So we do have a lot of private conversations. In fact, after we finish our show tonight, I'll be spending about half an hour to an hour just chatting with my son and seeing how he's doing as well.
Okay, well, we'll keep this moving so you can get to that conversation. We talked about some of the challenges of fatherhood and being a young father, but what are some of the other challenges that you would like to share about being a dad? Something that might help a current or prospective pharmacist dad.
I think one of the things that was difficult for me, and it's probably difficult for many of the pharmacists that are listening today, when we go through a curriculum that is so science-based, you have this perspective that everything must follow a formula, right? If it's 7 o'clock, there's a routine. We wake up, we have breakfast, we get ready for school, and we do all that, and it goes like clockwork. And then you have little humans that you give birth to or help give birth to, and they have their own agenda, which varies day by day. And it threw me off every time. Like, you try as a dad to be able to instill in them some ideology of like, oh, this is how we're gonna go. This is what our day is gonna look like, sweetie. We lay out our clothes first. We pack our lunches the night before. We get in the car. You have class or school at 7:45. So this is what we're going to do, right? You broadcast the intention and the actions that are going to be taken. And then all of that gets thrown out the window, all of it, right? Because somebody had a nightmare, or somebody, lost, didn't do their homework and they don't want to go to school, or they have a fight with their best friend, and all of these things, and you're just like, you're sitting beside yourself because like, I have an agenda. I have to get this. I have to get to work. You have to go to school. Like all of these things. So I can say now, especially now, because the responsibility as a parent is very different for me at this age, right? As a 50-year-old with a 30-year-old child, or a 30-year-old, a 28, and a 27-year-old, I still have some responsibility to them, but they are now grown and they make their own decisions. So when we have conversations today, it's about how can I help you with the problems that you're having, not how do I fix the problems that I see that you are having. And so I would say it's very, very rewarding to be at this stage and have that relationship. But if you're young, or if you have young children, a couple of pieces of advice. Number one, take every day, as a blessing and as a new adventure. I think that's the one thing I would go back and tell myself is no 2 days are ever going to be the same, ever. And so if you wake up knowing that, hey, I wonder what God, Mother Nature, the universe has for me in store today, and embrace that, you'll be better off at the end of the day. You will have zero regrets. Your children will, love you, and they will be like, oh, mom, dad was always cool, because they always just kind of went with the flow. That's number one. Number two, leverage family every opportunity you get. So I was very fortunate that we had extended family in the area, my parents, my ex-wife's family, and just a large network of people that would offer. And as a parent, you sort of feel very reluctant to say yes, like, oh, it's my child. I'm quite capable of raising my child. Like that was the prevailing attitude. And in reality, the fact is, no, you're not. You're not capable of raising your child by yourself. It's very, very difficult. And so any opportunity that comes up, take advantage of it, and watch the interactions between your child and them, because there are things that you will never be able to teach them because it's just not part of your strengths wheelhouse. It's somebody else's strengths wheelhouse. Like I'll give you a great example. My wife is super, super tolerant and extremely patient with our grandchildren. Extremely. Like she will spend 14 to 18 hours with them babysitting and come home
Wow.
with like baby food in her hair, wet socks because she stepped in juice, and just like a variety of things, right? And these are things that she is just like, this is part and parcel of the gig. And for me, with a little bit of well, maybe a lot more than a little bit of OCD, the idea of cleanliness is like paramount. And so the minute I get a stain on my shirt, I'm like, hang on, guys. I'm going to put you in your playpen and I'm going to go change and I'll be right back. And now 15 minutes have lapsed, and they're like, who's going to play with us? So, those are things that I will, hopefully I'm not passing them on to my grandchildren. But in reality, like there are things that people can do that you can't. And so if you acknowledge that and give them that exposure, you're going to be better off.
Yeah, childcare is a challenge, and I second that. If you have family that are appropriate to help out, excuse me, if you have family that can help out and they're good caregivers, I second that notion. Definitely.
100%. 100%.
Yes. Well, thank you for sharing some of those challenges. Is there anything else you wanted to add before I move on to the next question?
Yeah, I think there's one more piece that I need to stress, and that is, as and maybe I'm just speaking I don't want to say that I'm speaking for all dads because I don't know if all dads feel this way. But I can tell you that, within my circle, whenever we men and dads get together and we talk about, hey, what are some hardships that we don't talk about enough, right? As a dad, as a father, as a husband, what I hear more and more about is, not just being a provider, because that's always been the traditional role. Like you go get a job, you make money, you support your family, you pay the bills. That is a huge element of being a dad. But the other element of that is, actual quality time. And that is a struggle for a lot of dads because sometimes the focus is the financial provisions, which comes at the bonding time and the quality time. That is the cost that goes towards that. So you can see pharmacists that may have to work like 3 12-hour shifts, but because of other factors, they will either pick up extra shifts or they will have to try to juggle, date night and or family time because they have to go do something else. And I would say again, just going back in time, if I could, I would be a little bit more, adamant about drawing lines and having boundaries, so that I could say no. I'm not going to sacrifice this day and a half that I've dedicated to my kids because I'm not going to get back the 5-year-old. I'm not going to get back the 12-year-old. And believe me, once they become teenagers, like you have a totally different child on your hands. And I've seen this happen with 3 of mine, and I cannot wait to see my grandchildren share the same experiences for my 3 kids. But I will tell you that, yeah, I mean, being a dad, if being a provider is probably the paramount objective, but that number two, spending quality time, man, it's a balance that we all try to get better at. And if you can, make it a 1A and a 1B. Don't do like, hey, that's priority one and that's priority two. Like they should almost be neck and neck, and splitting that up 50-50 within the allocated time is where you'll win the most.
Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that. That's a very good piece of advice, and thank you again.
Yeah, I appreciate, again, I appreciate the opportunity. I'm a very open book, and I will tell you that that's probably one of the biggest regrets is that I can look back at my fatherhood, my years of being a father, and I can say, yeah, I did a great job providing for my family. I worked hard. I brought home money. I like made sure that the kids had clothes and education and toys and books and all of that, right? But I can probably count on both hands how many times a year I literally had a moment with my kids because I took a day out of a month to go play ball with them or to teach them how to ride a bike, or to take them to an arcade. Like just silly things, right? But that's the quality time that I wish I could have duplicated, tripled, quadrupled now that I think about it.
By you sharing that, there might be somebody that will hear that and think, "You know what? That's me right now, and I think I wanna make a change, and I'm gonna contact Iqbal to redo my resume, and I'm gonna look for a new job." You could be
Hey, I
helping on
welcome
2 different fronts.
it. I love it.
Yes. All right. Well, I know we were talking about some things that are kinda sensitive, so I'm gonna lighten it up, and can you tell me some of your favorite parts of being a father? I think you already mentioned some.
I have. So I think one of the favorite things about being a dad now is to see the parts of me that are being carried forward by my kids. And they can be like little simple things, like, for me, romantic comedies were a critical piece of like how I see life and how I enjoyed movies, right? And so and that in sci-fi movies, right? Marvel, DC, like all of those things, like that is literally how I would like do downtime with my kids when I came home from work. It didn't stick with all of them, right? All 3 of them are not like, watching the Avengers or, identifying with either Doctor Strange or Black Widow or whoever their favorite characters, but one did. One of them is like, listen, this is something that's important to me, and I feel like it's a part of me that is something I'm taking from me and passing it on. So watching elements of what things that I like, things that I did with them carried forward, it's like a legacy piece that you get to stop and go, okay, you were listening, or like that meant something to you. I find it really funny because each of the kids is doing something different, and out of the multitude of stimuli they've had with me over the course of years, like they just took 1 or 2 things and they were like, I don't know why, but I really like this. Like one of my kids loves Frank Sinatra and old jazz, right? And that is how we would spend our time. Like I would just have the Rat Pack playing in the background, or Chris Botti, and like she loves it, like, and that is like her thing. So it's watching the little elements that you're sort of like, oh, I like this song, and then you realize you like that song too, or you like that artist, or you like that Marvel comics, Marvel superhero. That just kind of shows like, okay, you know what, we have this bond, and that goes well. So that's number one. The other thing that makes me really proud is watching my kids achieve the goals that they set for themselves, right? And so I mentioned this earlier that I was going to give some details. My son, the PhD in political science, who now works as a data scientist, he was probably my most problematic child. By starting the fifth grade until 2 years after high school, like, he was passive aggressive, and he knew that I valued education, and so because I valued education, he devalued education. He purposely did not do his homework. He would do his homework after being forced to do it, but then wouldn't turn it in. He's the only kid I know that has ever failed driver's ed, and not because he crashed a car, not because he couldn't drive, but because he didn't turn in the homework. And this is just, I mean, he just drove me nuts. And so what's so funny is that even though he didn't drop out of high school, he didn't graduate on time. He's took another year. And then afterwards, the rules in this house and my house were very simple. And I'm probably a typical dad, but my rules were this. At the age of 18, you have two paths. Option one, or path one, you go to college, which I will pay for. You get to live in our house. I will pay for your food, your clothes, your car, your gas, your rent, and all of that. And your job is to get A's and B's. That is your job. You get your degree, whatever you want to pursue, literature, English, Greek, politics, I don't care. But that's what you're going to do. Or option B, or path number two, go out there and be a productive member of society and get a job. You can't live here. You're not going to get shelter. You're not going to get food, but we'll visit, and you can see us like once a week or once every other week for dinner, right? You start your own life. So he went with option two. And it took him 18 months to being kicked out from his mom's house, from his uncle's house, from his friend's house, and all the places that he crashed to realize that he needed to come back. And when he came back, the same rules kind of applied. You got to go to college, you got to do this. And he did a 180. He went from failing classes on purpose to National Honor Society. He became like the president of Model UN at College of DuPage. And then he went on and got his doctorate degree in political science. And now he's like leading, diversity and inclusion initiatives at his company, and really, really actively involved in a lot of different things. And, to watch him do these things because he wants to, and not just do them like a checklist, but do them because he wants to add quality and change the world. That's the part that gets me, where it's like, yeah, yeah, you're my kid. I love that. And same thing with my stepdaughter, right? She wants to be a sergeant. She wants to be a detective. She's studying hard. And here's a woman that, has got twins, and, protecting and serving our community, working like, 40 plus hours a week, taking on tests, and, because she wants to do good for the world. It's like, yeah, that just makes me proud.
Oh, that's awesome. Those are such great comments. Oh my gosh. I love the part about pushing your son out of the nest. And it took him 18 months to get to the point where he was like, okay, I want to make some changes. 18 months. That is a long time. I'm not judging him, but wow, it must be so hard as a parent to not swoop in there and try to intervene. So I give you a lot of credit for
I
letting
had
that
a lot
happen.
of people that were, they were judgmental, and they have, they had their opinions, and that's fine, right? They would say like, "Well, you can't do that. He's your son, he's your blood." And I said, "Yeah, no, I'm not doubting you. I'm not saying that he's not my kid. He is definitely my son. But he is an adult, and this is the choice that he is making, right? So when you make a choice, you either reap the rewards or you pay the consequences. And I cannot be the one that is going to save you from the decisions that you make. I will be there in catastrophic times, in calamities that occur outside of your control. God forbid he gets robbed, house burns down, car accident, anything that's like totally outside of his control. Yeah, you bet I'm going to swoop in, right? He's my son or my daughter or my stepdaughter. And I will say, like, yeah, let's do this. But if that's the choice that you're making, I have to let you make that choice and I have to let you figure out what you think you did right or wrong. And I will help you from a guidance and a counseling perspective, but I can't make those decisions for you. And so, yeah, it was hard on all of us, especially when your parents are coming back to you and saying, how could you do that to your son? And I'm like, you can take him if you want, but just know this, when you're tired and sick of the fact that he's not listening to you, you're going to realize that you're going to come to the same conclusion that I did. And honestly, Kim, that is what happened. So for 12 months, he circulated through his mom, his uncle, and all his friends. And then the last 6 months, my parents were like, no, 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 you can come live with us. And I will tell you that that was a very hard 6 months for all of them, right? I get to live in my house next door to them, and I get to hear the fights and the arguments and the frustration. And after 6 months, my parents came to me and they said, you need to do something. And I said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to offer him the same offer I gave to him 18 months ago. It's the same thing. I'm not changing a thing, right? But you chose to step in and provide for him some support and guidance with the expectation that he was going to change. He's not going to change until he realizes that that's just not the way things work. So we went back to the original deal. And like I said, I could not be more proud of him today.
Very good. Congratulations on successfully raising 3 humans.
3 little humans. Yes. They're not little anymore. They are almost as tall or taller than me.
Yes, that does happen too. Both of my boys are taller than I am. I am quite short. I am, about 5'3", 5'3" and a half, and my boys are 5'10" and approaching 6'1".
Wow.
I know, my husband's tall,
Wow.
he's 6'2".
I love it.
Yeah, yeah, sometimes, opposites attract, tall guys marry short girls. Hey, it works for us.
Works for you guys. That's great.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing some of your favorite parts of being a dad, and I have a couple more questions if you have a little bit more time.
Sure.
Okay, it's up to you if you wanna answer them long or short. Alright, here we go. How do you balance work and family?
I had to draw. So I did a really poor job when I was a dad with young kids. Now that I'm a dad with 3 old kids, my parents and in-laws, I have learned to do the 1A, 1B routine, right? So it's a 50-50 split. When I need to work, and I'm very, very fortunate to work for a company that allows me the flexibility to shift and adapt to emergencies and changing situations. So in my mind, whenever there's a problem with my parents or in-laws, that rises to the top. I address that issue, and then the rest of my time is spent doing the work responsibilities that I have. So there is no delineation as there once was back in the day, right? There was this idea that, hey, you work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 or 8 to 5. And then when you go home, you get to be 100% with your family. Same thing on the weekends. That does not exist. So I've learned to compartmentalize a lot faster. And I've learned to be able to reacclimate faster as well. So when you're shifting between caregiver role to consultant role, you need to be able to shut down some parts of the emotions that you just felt after you made sure your parents are okay, or your kids are okay, and then go right back into consultant role with that mindset. So quicker shifts, less emotional attachments in some cases, especially during the adaptation phase.
Yeah, have a short memory about those emotional pieces of your day, right?
Absolutely. I don't dwell on what's happened. What's happened has happened, and we've done the best that we could for the client or the parent, and then we just pick up where we pick up where we left off from last time.
Very good. Hey, Iqbal, what do you do for me time to recharge your batteries?
Great question. And I'll tell you that me time was not normally part of my routine younger years, but in the last 5 or 10 years, it's a priority. And even my wife knows that she's not part of that me time. So what I do by me time is this. After I finish my last prayer of the day, which is usually now in the summertime around 9:30, I will grab a cigar. I will go downstairs and sit either in my garage or on the deck, depending on the season, and I will peruse through LinkedIn and TikTok looking to see what my colleagues and friends are doing and learn about the subject matters that are important to me. So for me, what's important is my religion and social media and consulting. Like those are the things that I always look for. Like, okay, who's doing something unique or better, and how can I learn from that? Or who has a celebration that I need to acknowledge and says, "Oh my God, you just got a new job, or you just got married, or you got a promotion, or like whatever. You just won a contest for your pie baking, whatever it is." Like I just want people to know, like, hey, I'm trying to stay connected, and that requires my attention. So when my wife is like, "Oh, let's spend quality time together," the reality of it is we schedule that. Like, okay, I will spend quality time with you on Saturday. The work will not get in the way. We'll go bike riding. We'll go have coffee. We'll sit and chat on the deck. It's all you. But every night, I need some me time because I just need to decompress and process what's happened and just be better for the next day.
Having that me time helps you be a better person, doesn't it?
100%. 100, maybe even 150%, Kim.
Awesome. I kind of like that LinkedIn is part of your downtime because that's so you.
I try to keep it as, throughout the day, but in reality, like, once I post, I'm not able to do anything more than respond to the engagements on that post. So if I post something and you say something like, "Oh, Iqbal, very cool," I can respond faster to that, but I won't have time to see what other people are posting. So that's when I do it at night.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Everybody needs me time, and whatever is valuable to you is what you should do. You heard it from Iqbal. He's got his own thing too.
I love it.
Awesome. All right. Now, going back to the topic of being a dad and having a family, raising kids, are there any books or products that you would recommend? I know this is super broad, but books or products that you would recommend to current or prospective dads?
Um, I don't know if I can answer this one, to be honest with you, Kim. I mean, for me, documentation is key. So if you don't have a cell phone to take selfies and pictures of your kids and make collages on Pinterest or whatever you want to do to document that, that's probably where I would say is probably the best tool, because those moments are things that your memories of what you're doing with your children or what you're seeing your children do are going to warp over time. You're not going to remember all of the granularity of the colors of the clothes that they were wearing, of the exact words that they said, right? So for me, I like to document those moments and then reflect on them multiple times over a couple of days or weeks, because that builds up a synapse in my brain that allows me to draw from it earlier. So for me, I would say document what you can. The world is moving so fast, and there are so many great products and so many new things that have come out in the last 30 years. My stepdaughter and my daughters are probably going to be the better resources in terms of what's a must for them. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they have like Google Nest, so they get to have like cameras and watch their kids sleep. We never did that. Like we just would open the door very quietly and slowly sneak in, praying to God you never stepped on that creaky board, and just check in. Are you breathing? Oh, okay, good. And then just go back out.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. That is a very legit thing to suggest. Make sure that you're documenting the journey because, the journey is beautiful. It really is.
It is.
Yes. And then two last questions. One is okay, kids are expensive. It is expensive to raise kids.
Very.
And you've done, yes, very, he says, and you've done the whole gamut from birth to now they're adults and now you have grandkids. So, this can be a very broad question as well. What is one thing that surprised you that you had to buy for your kids?
Hospitalizations, emergency room visits. It was my son more than my daughter, but I would tell you that he picked up the craziest, most unique infections and viruses that I've ever seen. Who gets scabies? Who brings home scabies and gives it not just to his sister, but mom and dad and then grandparents? So we're itching for like weeks. Nobody does, but my son did. So that was a mystery that took a month to solve because we had to go through multiple different providers that couldn't diagnose it right. Multiple rhinovirus, adenoviruses, stomach flus. I mean, we spent a lot of time in the doctor's offices or emergency rooms or urgent care clinics. Like, okay, 2 a.m. This is what you got to do. There was nothing else that was like an expensive buy. Like bikes were like moderate. Like we never bought anything luxurious, like a $2,000 bicycle for an 8-year-old. Right? Like that was never part of the plan, and that was never part of their asks. It's just the emergency, just the health conditions that they had were just like, okay, we didn't plan for this, but yeah, let's go ahead and sorry, we picked the wrong insurance plan that's got a higher premium and lower and higher out of pocket cost, but it is what it is.
Yes, well, I've never heard of a superpower for a child being acquiring infections, and I shouldn't be laughing about that. But as a parent of 2 boys, and things have gone wrong that I never saw coming, I agree with you. I mean, that's one of those things that it's just surprising, and thank you for sharing that.
You bet. Yeah, hopefully we'll never have to share those again.
Yes, I know, hopefully those days are behind you, yeah. Hopefully he's got new superpowers.
Yeah, he better.
What is your favorite Avengers character? That's not the last question, but I gotta ask because you were talking about Avengers movies.
Iron Man, 100%. In fact, there's just a post that we did very recently. I was giving kudos to one of my colleagues at work, and he is also an Avengers fan. And he's like, "Oh, we're like the Avengers, right? One big superpower team." So I called it out. I'm like, "Okay, you look a lot like Mark Ruffalo, so my guess is that you're the Hulk." But I've always been identified and kind of like gone with Iron Man, mostly because of the beard and his little
Oh,
special shape. But
yeah.
to be honest with you, there's a slight bit of overconfidence that Tony Stark displays. And I'm not going to say that that's me, but it's certainly not me. So there are elements of the Tony Stark character, as well as the Iron Man suit that I just are like, I can fly, I can beat bad guys, and certainly I can defend myself with the suit. So yeah, I tend to gravitate more towards Iron Man than any other Marvel character that's out there.
Awesome, awesome. That seems like a, table topics question for a Toastmasters meeting. What's your favorite Avengers character? But, thanks for answering it here on my podcast. Now I'm gonna go to the real last question. I had to have some fun with you.
No problem.
All right. The last question is just general advice. Feel free to be as broad or as narrow as you like. What advice do you have for current or prospective dads that you haven't already covered?
That's a good question. Kim, you would save the hardest one for last. I would say three things. Number one, if you're not a dad yet, but you know you're going to be one, don't read the books. Go talk to people that are new dads, established dads, and older dads. Ask them these questions, right? Ask them what their pain points were at each stage. Ask them what tools, resources, or best practices that they were able to use to help solve their problems. And then ask them the one thing that they're focusing on now because they learned from somebody else's mistake. And you will find that, and these are people that you trust, right? They shouldn't just be some dad off the street. Like these are people that you know. Because what you'll find is that more than likely, you're going to be bringing your kids to go and spend time with them too, right? Because they have kids, and your kids will going to want other kids to play with. So you kind of create a little bit of a microcosm, and you'll also be at a competitive advantage because you'll know what they faced earlier, and you'll be faster at solving for those problems or just managing yourself in that space.
Excellent words of advice. Thank you for sharing. Yes, we can all learn from others. And having a support system is important. Letting other people know that you need support is very empowering actually. Just it being vulnerable actually makes you more powerful.
Agreed.
Yeah. Well, Iqbal, we're going to wrap this up. I enjoyed this conversation so much. I love talking to you.
And the feeling is mutual, Kim.
Awesome. Awesome. Yes. And we finally got a podcast in together, which has been just great. Like we're celebrating, fist pumps all around.
Love it.
But anyways, I just wanted to say thank you again for being here on the Pharmacist Voice podcast, and you take care and happy Father's Day.
Thank you so much, Kim. Thank you so much for having me. Bye-bye.
I'd like to share some final thoughts with you. First of all, if you know someone who needs professional and personal development services from Iqbal, please share this episode with them. There was some great information here, and as you can tell, he's amazing. Iqbal's LinkedIn profile link is in the show notes so you can easily get in touch. And there's also a link to his company, Atcha International, in the show notes. So you can see a little bit more about what he does, what he offers, and also get in touch that way if you like. So many pharmacists right now are looking to do something else. If you are one of them or you know one, my hope is that listening to Iqbal today at least helped you think about resumes, LinkedIn, and interviewing from the point of view of a recruiter/talent acquisition professional. I learn something every time I talk to Iqbal. I really do think he's amazing. Highly recommend you check him out, talk to him, schedule an appointment if you need his services. Next, I want to give Iqbal a lot of credit for being not only a talented person and hard worker, but a young dad, a young grandpa, and a supportive son to his aging parents. He has a lot on his plate, yet, to me, he seems to have it all, and he still knows how to recharge his batteries and does it. That's great. Everyone should have a vision for what they want their life to be like and have boundaries and still find that time for themselves. I would say that Iqbal is a role model for me. Iqbal, I want to be like you when I grow up. He would never ask anyone to do something that he would not do himself. And to me, that means he's a role model. So thank you, Iqbal, for all you do for the profession. You are a role model. And finally, just a general comment here. I really enjoyed hearing how Iqbal has used his voice as a pharmacist and as a dad. I have known Iqbal for a couple of years now. We've had some Zoom meetings, never met in person. We've talked via email and LinkedIn, and I really feel like I know him. But I still learned things about him through this podcast episode, which was really fun. And there's something about using your voice, okay? I got to hear his passion for Toastmasters and talent acquisition and helping professionals advance their careers and improve their leadership skills. And I got to hear his passion about his family and how proud he is of them. That was really cool. There was so much in this conversation. It was really two friends chatting, but I also learned something about him, and I'm so glad that you got to hear our conversation and learn from it too. That's all I've got for you today. I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did, and I just want to say thank you for listening to episode 158 of the Pharmacist Voice podcast. Please visit thepharmacistvoice.com to read the show notes. Let me just tell you real quick what's in the show notes today. You'll find Iqbal's bio, a link to Atcha International, a link to Toastmasters International, Iqbal's social media links to his podcast, and there's a lot more in there. So check that out. And just a reminder, find a Toastmasters meeting. You'll be glad you did. If you know someone who would like this episode or needs to hear it, please share it with them and subscribe to or follow the Pharmacist Voice podcast on your favorite podcast player and YouTube to get each new episode right when it comes out. Join me next week for a solo episode. It's one of my drug name pronunciation episodes. And if you're a dad, I hope you had a fantastic Father's Day weekend last weekend. Enjoy the last few days of June, everyone, and thank you again for listening.